Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Lovely to see you, and Shabbat Shalom to everybody who's joining us on our live stream tonight. So just before we get started, in case you didn't see in the weekly email, we go along with King County, and so we're, like King County, ambiguously recommending that people wear masks even if you're vaccinated, but it is not required, recommended, so I'll leave it up to you to decide. And Michaela and I will be unmasked as we're leading so that you can hear us. We're far enough away from you. We just go with the flow. Here we are. So, would not have anticipated a week ago that we would be back to this, but so glad that you're all here with us to welcome in Shabbat together. And we are going to be using our prayer book, our Siddur, if you have one nearby, and if you're joining us via live stream, if you don't have a prayer book at home, you can use the flip book, the CCR flip book, to follow along. And we're going to start with our candle blessing on pages 2 and 3. Before we light our candles, let's join together in the reading at the bottom, or in the middle of page 3. Please join with me. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. And we'll join together in blessing for Shabbat, our 2 blessings of the candles and Kiddush. On page 5, we take a moment to celebrate all of our simchas, the things that we are grateful for, anything we're celebrating in particular this week. It seems we don't have a microphone this time, but that's all right. We'll just speak really loudly. So, start over here. Oh no. I would have called on you eventually, but yeah. Say it again. I'm gonna turn this off because it's just not. Or is he coming to bar mitzvah tomorrow? Awesome. Yay. birthday. Amazing. This Sunday is my mom's birthday, too. Happy birthday, Robin. Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, great. Wonderful. All right. Let's join together in the Kiddush on page 5, taking in all that sweetness with us into Shabbat. Let's join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu Shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon himheilanu Zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta v'tanu kidashta mikol hamim Shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon himchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. L'chaim. All right, and we turn now to the Kabbalat Shabbat portion of our service, welcoming in the spirit of Shabbat. We're going to start that on page 13 with Ya'alo's Sadai. This is part of Psalm 96, the second psalm that we sing in our Kabbalat Shabbat service, and it's the at the bottom 4 lines, you'll see Ya'alo's Sadai there. Take that joy with us into Lechato D, welcoming in the Sabbath bride, imagining that we are standing side by side, the Shekhinah getting ready to become married to the Sabbath Spirit. That's how much love we bring into this 25-hour period. Lechato D is on page 20 and 21, and we join together in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And our custom is, if you're able, when we get to verse 9, we rise and face the entrance to the sanctuary. Have a seat, and we're going to continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 24. 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Shalom. continue now with the Baruch Hu, our call to worship on page 28. If you're able, please rise. Oh, to the right? Continue now with Ma'ariv Aravim, which is on page 30, and joining in with Roll into Dark, and the Hebrew begins about halfway down the prayer with Borei Yom V'Laila.
Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day.
We'll continue on page 32 with Ahavat Olam, our blessing, our prayer, acknowledging God's love for us and giving thanks to God for giving us the Torah.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Avta.
I'd like to invite up Oren to lead us in Shema Ve'ahavta. Shema is on page 34, and Ve'ahavta follows on page 36.
Should I start? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'divarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha u'vleftecha v'derech u'shoftecha u'kumecha u'kshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu atotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha Lema'an tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim aleichem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lehiot lachem l'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem emet. Yasher koach. Beautifully led. Thank you. Seated? Yeah. You can go back to your seat now. Nicely done. And we move now into Michamocha, our song of freedom and redemption. Before we sing Michamocha, let's join together on page 41, right next to Michamocha. Sing the song of men and women, join in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Come
Nestor likes that one. And we continue on page 42 with Hashkivenu, our prayer asking God to create a shelter of peace over us, a Sukkah Shalom.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu the Shalom, Ve'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim, Ufros Aleinu Sukkah Shlomecha, Ufros Aleinu Sukkah Shlomecha, Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right, O Adonai. Amen. Amen. Amen.
We move now from the section of our service called Shema and its blessings into the Amidah, which is our time. We start out praying together as one community, and then this is our opportunity to continue with our own silent and private prayers. So we'll begin on page 46. If you're able, please rise.
Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Agi Tehilatecha, Ufi Agi Tehilatecha. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Agi Tehilatecha, Ufi Agi Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Hayel HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah, Elohim, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, v'zocher hastei avotim achot, u'mevii gula lifnei bneihem, l'man shemo be'ahava, melech ozer u'mashiach u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham v'ezrat Sarah, atah gibor l'chamayim, mechayei hakol atah rav v'hoshia. Morid atah, mechakel chayim bechesed, mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, tzomech noflim v'rafeh holim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem emunato lishenei alcha. hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shem hakadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yihalelu hasalah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Take time now for our silent prayer, and you can be seated whenever you're done, and we'll join back together for Oseh Shalom, our prayer for peace, on page 62.
Say shalom, Biromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yoshvei tevel ve'imeru, Amen, ve'imeru, Amen, ve'imeru. May we find love, and may we find love. Amen, 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 amen. Oh, say shalom, be Roma.
And as part of our prayer for wholeness and completeness on Shabbat, we also sing a healing prayer together, thinking of our loved ones who are in need of strength, those who are ill, those who take care of loved ones who are ill, and we send healing prayers to all those in need. This Shabbat, we're praying for the healing of Valentina Derikovsky Azrael Early, Rohan Early, Myra Masig, Patricia Shapiro, Orly Sherman, Amy Thornton, Deborah Newman-Ziskasingay, Lindsay Robinson, Laura Armstrong, Stacy Hetzel, Diane Turner, Jacqueline Tara Smith, Deborah Rose, Liliana Oxsmith, Phil Grinker, Eileen Kreisman, Ronnie Haber, Sherry Schnabel, Carlene Ackerman, Mary Wilhite, Ann Bernstein, David Green, Margaret Nichols, Philip Oringer, Vadim Barzam, Michael Kozlerich, Patty Ritzman, Lyle Eakes, Arnie Goldstein, Nancy Gersman, Anna Rose Good, and Carol Kaplan. If there's anyone that you're especially thinking of this Shabbat and you feel comfortable sharing the name of that person and your relationship to that person, I invite you to do so now nice and loud so everybody can hear. I'll start over here.
Linda Stein and Sandy Goodkin.
We're going to join together in our prayer for healing. The Hebrew is El Narafan Allah, which comes straight from our Torah text, and the English is a repeat after me. So Michaela will sing it and we can repeat it.
Dear God of our ancestors,
help us renew our faith.
help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days. Restore our strength of body.
Help clarify our minds.
Help clarify our minds.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Rejuvenate our lives.
El Narafana, Refana Lanu. El Narafana, Refana Lanu. Thank you for all these blessings.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Throughout our days and nights,
Throughout our days and nights,
we celebrate the journey,
we celebrate the journey.
this precious gift of life.
This precious gift of life.
El Narafana, Refana Lanu. El Narafana, Refana Lanu. El Narafana, Refana Lanu. El Narafana, Refana Lanu.
May God swiftly send all of our loved ones a compassionate and complete renewal of body and spirit. And let's say together, Amen. it happened, turn that down a little bit. It happened on a hot summer day that there were two friends, two guys, who were walking down the streets of New York City. And there was noise everywhere, as you probably know, even if you haven't been in New York City. The trucks were rumbling by, the cab drivers were honking, people were talking on their cell phones. Everywhere you turned, it seemed like someone was whizzing by and making noise. And while they were walking, quite abruptly, one of the men turned to his friend and asked, "Did you hear that sound?" And his friend looked at him and said, "What sound?" And he said, "The sound of a cricket." And his friend was like, "A cricket? What are you talking about?" And the man said, "There's a cricket in the window box across the street." And the friend was like, "You've got to be kidding me. There's no way that you can possibly hear if there's a cricket in a window box across the street. We're in New York City, for goodness sakes. There's like cars whizzing by, there's people, like there's no possible way." And the guy says, "Okay, well, let's go look and see." So they walk across the street. Lo and behold, there's a window box and there's a cricket in it. And the friend is like, "Okay, that's unbelievable. How is it even possible that you heard that? I don't understand." And the guy said, "No, it's easy. Watch this." And he takes a quarter from his pocket, and he holds out the quarter and about arm's length, and he drops the quarter onto the ground. And at that first plunk that it hits the sidewalk, everybody around them stops, and they all turn to see where the coin fell. And the guy looks at his friend and he says, "See, it all depends on what you're listening for." So the Parshat HaShavua, our Torah portion this week, is Parshat Ekev, which kind of annoys me as a name for a Torah portion, and I'll explain why. So the Torah portions, I know many of you know this, but the Torah portions are named for the first significant or substantial word of that piece of text. And so the way it works is that if the Torah portion starts with something like Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe, and God said to Moses, that happens a lot in the Torah. Usually it skips past that and picks the next word or phrase that's important. So for example, Acharei Mot. The portion Acharei Mot actually starts Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe, Acharei Mot. And God said to Moses after the death of his sons. And if the first word of a Torah portion is a juicy word, like Vayera from Genesis, and God appeared, then that's the name of the portion. And so this week's Torah portion is called Ekev, because I guess it was decided that this was the first substantial word. But Ekev means something like if. That's really what it means, if. So the first two words of the Torah portion are V'haya Ekev, which means, and if you, ... as in, and if you follow all these commandments, blessings will come, which is a common refrain that we hear in Deuteronomy as Moses is reminding the Israelites again and again to be sure, trying to really ingrain in them that they should follow the God's ways so that they ensure a life of blessing. But for me, not that there's anything wrong with the word Ekev, but personally, I think the more significant word is the word that comes right after that, the third word. And that word is Tishme'un. So for those of you that are visual people, you can visualize in your mind Tishme'un, that the root is Shin Mem Ayin, which might sound familiar to you. So the first verse of this Torah portion is usually translated as something like, And if you obey these rules and observe them carefully, Adonai your God will maintain faithfully for you the covenant that God made on oath with your fathers. So a lot of times tishme'un is translated as obey. But, as I mentioned, the root is shin mem ayin, which probably will sound familiar to people as the root of Shema. And if I asked you what Shema means, my guess is you probably would not say obey. You would probably say either to hear or to listen. And you would be correct. And what's so interesting about this word is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichronon Livracha, he makes note of this, that the root Shema has so many different, it contains more than just the idea of listening or hearing. But he notes that this is one of many words that he uses a phrase called the fallacy of translatability, which is a fancy way of saying that one word in one language can't necessarily just be easily translated into another word in another language. So I think the common, I don't know if it's actually true or not, but the common one example that everyone gives is about how there are however many words for snow in Inuit, and we have one word for snow, right? So that's the idea. So here we have this word Shema, which we often translate as to hear or to listen. And we have a form of it in our Torah portion that gets translated as obey. And so Rabbi Sachs points out that there are actually, the word Shema and that root, it's so much more significant than just listening, just that act of listening. And it can mean to, it can mean to hear, to listen. It can also mean to hearken, to heed, to pay attention to, and, as he points out, to understand, which is really interesting. If you look at the story of the Tower of Babel, we also see that root in a verse in Genesis where God says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand," yishme'u, each other. So when we say Shema, it's more than just listening. It's also understanding, heeding, or taking into consideration, paying attention to. And for me, this really caught my eye this week. And the depth of translation of Shema, of the depth of what Shema can really represent, that it's more than just listening, and its role here in our Torah portion is, I think, at the heart of what we're being called to do. And it's not just about the Shema prayer, but in our Torah portion, it's actually, our Torah portion actually is a continuation of the end of last week's Torah portion, which makes sense to anybody who knows that the Torah was not originally divided into the portions that we have. And so it seems logical that that the idea that we start with in our Torah portion is a continuation from the end of last week's Torah portion. So again, the sentence is that, and if you tishme'un, which our Torah usually Tanakh translates as obey, but if you tishme'un, if you obey, if you listen, if you pay attention to these rules and observe them carefully, Adonai your God will maintain faithfully for you the covenant that God made on oath with your fathers. So it seems really clear to me that what God really wants us to do is internalize what it is that we're doing. It's not just about going through the motions, and it's not even just about that idea of protecting the commandments. We have that verb, shomer. But we're supposed to be paying attention to really hear so that we can understand the meaning of what we're doing. And I think that this gets at the heart of Reform ideology. There are many points in the Torah where I think, wow, this is such like a Reform point of view. And this is one of them. Because Reform Judaism is not just about going through the motions. It's not about following commandments because we feel halakhically bound to do so, which there's nothing wrong with that. There are many people who live a life where they're driven by that sense of halakha, that feeling bound to the law. And for Reform Jews, we put understanding at the center of our practice so that we can be intentional about how we live in the world. And what I find really compelling about our Torah portion is what I mentioned earlier, that it's a continuation of what came before. And what came before is Moses basically pleading with the people, urging the people not to become complacent. He is begging the people to continue to pay attention, to not get lazy or, frankly, too full of themselves, and to continue to really take into their heart what it is that they've agreed to do as part of this covenant with God. And that really resonates for me personally, because so often I feel like, at least for myself, but I think others also go through life oftentimes in a state of complacency. I think it's normal to get into a rhythm. We go into autopilot. We have the routines that we do every day. And there's no doubt that the pandemic threw that on its side and turned that over for us. But I think, at least for myself, even now, a year and a half into the pandemic, I have a new, different type of complacency that I can feel that I can get into. And so Moses reminds us that our inheritance, that our sacred obligation is not to go through the motions in life, but to tishma'un, however you want to translate that word, tishma'un, to listen, to understand, to take to heart, and to hear. And what will we hear? Well, it all depends on what you're listening for. Shabbat shalom. We are going to continue now with Aleinu, which is our prayer reminding us that we have a sacred obligation, not just to learn, not just to listen, but to be an example for all the nations in the world. We're on page 282, the bottom of the page. If you are able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet kedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishkachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'kor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei Melech, Malchei HaMalchim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're going to continue on page 284. Shehu notei shamayim ve'yosei haaretz, u'Moshe vikaro b'shamayim imaro, u'shkinatu zo, ve'gofei meromim, hu Eloheinu Enon, em Elokeinu efesulato, kagatu v'torato, v'tatayom v'ashavota, elevavecha, ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim ima'o, ve'oharetz, mitachat enon, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, Be seated. Our thoughts turn now to our loved ones that we've lost either recently or at this time in years past. This Shabbat, as a community, we're mourning the recent loss. We're in the Shoshim period of Stephen Skip Wayne, our congregant, and Donna Ross, mother of Sarah Prippus Capi and Emily Prippus. And this Shabbat, we also observe the yahrzeits for Adele Berman, Hannah Cushman, Jack Dominitz, Stuart Dougason, Donald Arthur Friedman, Francis R. Goldner, Ernest Goldstein, Ellen Hogan, Roberta Ketover Nargentino, Ivan Kirshner, Tricia Mason, Carl S. Miller, Rose Nemens, Sally Pohl, Elise Potashnik, Marion Prazow, Michael Spruill, and Edward Stubbs. If anybody is saying Kaddish tonight and you want to share anything about the person you're remembering, I invite you to do so now. If you want, Adele, you don't have to. But. Thank you. Let's all rise as one community as we join together in Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yote v'amlich malchute, b'chayachon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei d'kutsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all of Israel, to the whole world, and we say together, amen. You can go ahead and be seated. I'm going to invite up Amy real fast. Amy, would you like to share anything on behalf of the board? What?
Would I like to swing on a star?
Yeah. I can't help you with that. Maybe Michaela can.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. It's such a pleasure to have all of you with us. Some of you I know for the first time in a long time. Some of you maybe first time ever. We are glad to have you here. For those of you joining us by live stream, we are delighted to have you as well. We know you could be watching the Olympics, and we thank you for choosing us instead, although I must say, in the Olympics, you would not get synchronized singing. Only here. And I really enjoyed tonight's service. Thank you both so much. Rabbi Molly, Michaela Goodkin. I don't know about you, but I like this application of the double portion on Shabbat to guitars. It's good.
We're entering the Olympics next time. Okay.
So thank you for, and I love the harmonies as well. Just delightful. Oren, you were great tonight. You gave us just a teaser about tomorrow, and we're so excited for your Bar Mitzvah and hope people can return for that, and that includes you folks. We're really looking forward to that. Only one other thing that I can think about right now, and that is 2 weeks hence, we will be at Crossroads Park enjoying our first ever Sha'aloha Shabbat. You do not have to do the hula, although who knows what you guys are going to do. But it's a chance to worship in the park again, as we love to do in the summer. Crossroads, you do need to register in advance, so go online and please join us. It's going to be a great evening all around. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Michaela. Love being with you. We're going to close with, oh, I apologize. I worked so, I'm not hard. I got all the slides ready because I was feeling bad that I didn't use the slides last week and then we can't get the TV to work. But we're going to close with Olam Chesed Yibaneh, which hopefully, if you know, please join, sing with us. Here we go.
Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadadai, Yadadai, Yadadai. 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 I will build this world from love, Yadadai, Yadadai, and you must build this world from love, Yadadai, Yadadai. And if we build this world from love, Yadadai, then God will build this world from love, Yadadai, Olam Chesed, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadadai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadadai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadadai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh,
Before we go to our Oneg Shabbat, we'll join together in Hamotzi. You can feel free to come grab a piece of challah. Please join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem